When secondary RE teacher Frances Burton heard about a conference for RE students exploring body theology, she jumped at the chance to go along and see what she could learn. We'll show you some interesting techniques and exercises from that day that you can use to inspire your Key Stage 4 students, and see how Frances applied them to her classroom.
We have built this day to be interactive. We have built this day around your opinions, your experience, your ideas. We've got students from 6 different schools and colleges here today, and by that we aim to model a good practice that teachers who come and watch the day can then take back and share in their own setting and run for themselves. And today's theme is the theology of the body. We've called it in the body, out of the body.
I'm going to move that over.
Frances is focusing on 5 key activities at the conference: a game involving sticky notes and personal statements, a commitment traffic lights game, an exploration of Catholic theology, a meditation session learning about Muslim concepts of the body, and finally, a kinesthetic activity based on modern ideas of body image.
In a moment, you will get 7 post-it notes, and you've got 20 prompts there. I'd like you to look carefully at those 20 prompts and choose 6 or 7 that you've got something to say about. And here are your prompts. The human body is amazing because, and some of you will be with me on this, that you can't rely on the body. Wander around this big area here and paper the walls with your wisdom on the first thoughts that you have about our body theology topic for the day.
This is a game we're going to invite you to play. So it's all about exploring what your values are and what you're actually committed to in life.
We've all had to pick 4 statements, and we've got to, they're sort of values really, and we've had to decide where personally we would put them in terms of commitment, whether we would be not committed or very committed or somewhere in the middle. So, and we've had to discuss why we've chosen to put those ones there.
I'm going to move that over here because although I'm gently committed to the idea of sharing ideas, keeping my ideas to myself, I don't always. So some circumstances I do, some circumstances I don't. I could see it working very well for GCSE students, and it may be a good introduction to sections on an A-level course perhaps, but yeah, best discussion out of GCSE students, I thought.
You couldn't do this kind of thing too often because there is a pressure to get work done, notes in books for revision and that sort of thing, and coursework if you do coursework. So.
But you could use the format and alter, what you're doing, to fit in.
Just breathe normally. So you're using your spirit now.
We really need to get people into our schools from other faiths. I come from a school in the countryside where, about 0.4% of the pupils represent different faiths.
One big breath in.
I've never met somebody who's a Sufi Muslim, and I haven't done any sort of hands-on meditation like that.
You're trying to use the power of your spirit to bring in the barakah or the energy.
And if they can just take back the idea that they're in control of their own lives, they can achieve grades, they can achieve their ambitions. It's about learning from religion as well as learning about religion. We're looking for pictures to do with people improving their sort of physical appearance. You've got self-tanning, or if you want double the amount of eyelashes, that sort of idea that you want to sort of make your body beautiful. And sort of fit in with culture and be attractive. It's a really good example of kinesthetic teaching, and yet even I'm having fun whilst learning. I think we forget that sitting down and writing isn't always the way to go.
I think, focusing on tasks generates the conversation, keeping people better focused than if you just give them a discussion topic.
I want to move on to that theology of the body, and we're all familiar with the phrase body language, and I just want you to turn to your partner, whoever's near you, and just show them that you are deeply interested, and if anybody wants to do that to me as well, that'd be really great, deeply interested in what they are saying.
It's quite philosophical, but I think that's what you need in GCSE. For my GCSE course, a section on relationships, which is the first bit, and There's lots on contraception and sex and all that kind of thing. I think a lot of that could be used in it.
Cohabitation, homosexuality, safe sex. Just put down what you think about those questions that are on that sheet.
I was going to say, I disagree that the natural law for a body is purely to reproduce, because not everybody wants to reproduce.
I think they would have had more to say about the whole sort of contraception being, making sex a lie and all that kind of thing. But I thought it was really well presented, and you know, it's just, you know, sometimes some questions get kids going and some don't, and I think you just got to move quickly when they don't.
The work particularly I'm going to take back is the work on commitment. It was the work where there was a traffic light system on a board, and the discussions created were absolutely fantastic. There are certain things that I perhaps wouldn't take back with me. The amount of time we spent on the magazine work, for instance, I can't allot that time into a classroom setting. It would be a very worthwhile activity, but when we've got learning objectives to get through, it was going to take a bit too long. Certainly what I have learnt is more interaction between pupils is the better, really. You know, I've seen teenage boys who perhaps wouldn't be so sort of energised about RE, becoming engaged in conversations and debating with each other. And even in the corridors, you know, people have said, "What are you doing?" "Oh yes, it's been good, hasn't it?" I've had a brilliant day. It's been really worth coming. You know, I've taken out a lot of teaching time to come, but there's a lot that I can take back with me. So yeah, it's been definitely worthwhile.
So how could some of these activities be applied in a classroom setting? We returned with Frances to Queen Elizabeth's Grammar School in Alford to watch her try out some ideas. Here she's preparing to teach a Year 11 lesson on commitments and values, focusing on Martin Luther King.
The first learning objective is that I'm going to ask you to consider your commitments and be able to give reasons for them. So, first of all, I've got an activity for you where you have to place statements as to whether you're very committed or not committed. Okay, and you've got to place your statements along this brick wall. Okay, off you go. I wondered about how I can apply those activities to a GCSE syllabus. On one sense, you know, you can spend hours on learning about yourself and other people around you, but at some point you need to learn about religious people, religious person, and find out some inspiration for your own life.
If I'm not religious and I can't commit myself to think about God, so I don't see God if he has no body or not, because I'm not the religious person, so I have to put not committed.
What about the rest of you?
I've always been told not to believe in God because there's not much evidence that he does exist, but I am being taught to respect other people's beliefs and how they practice it.
So what evidence do you have that God doesn't exist?
Because if he was real, he'd show himself and he'd stop all hunger and poverty and everything.
For me, the commitments and traffic light game it was a very good way of opening discussion. I think there are some flaws with that activity as well, though. I think the idea of having a red, an orange and a green, you know, helps you focus how far you're committed to something. But I don't actually think light like that. You know, commitments float in my life anyway.
You wouldn't consciously normally think about these things, whereas when they're put down, you think you can start to explain it more to other people if you can tell other people about your views on things.
We don't usually talk about in like everyday conversation, so like we wouldn't chat at break or whatever about it.
I needed to be able to include an active activity on commitment into the syllabus using Martin Luther King, and I did change it slightly though. So we're looking at what Martin Luther King's committed to, what his aims are, and I've put a sheet of paper on your desk that if you'd like to turn to. It's the speech he gave at Lincoln Memorial, known famously as I Have a Dream speech.
I have a dream that one day, right down in Georgia and Mississippi and Alabama,
I do think textbooks have their place, but other approaches to RE also have their place as well, and I think we shouldn't naturally revert back to what could seem to be an easy option for teaching. I think that the pupils deserve to be engaged. What would you say Martin Luther King's religious commitments were?
What he said was that all people, black and white, were children of God.
Tom?
That like the Good Samaritan, that whoever it doesn't matter who you are, you'll always go across there and help them.
What about his spiritual commitments? What was he committed to?
Telling people to fulfil their dreams, and he shouldn't let other people dictate what dreams you want to fulfil.
So what is it about Martin Luther King then that you actually find inspiring? Emma?
I find it inspiring that he stood up for what he believed in, and even though black people weren't treated the same as white people, people still listened to him and tried to make a difference in people's lives.
Well done. Now we're going to evaluate how we, or sometimes people, can hold arguably contradictory commitments. The post-it notes, well, it's an activity I've tried before, and it's one that was used at the conference. Now on your sheet of paper there are some statements which could seem hypocritical, and I want you and your pairs to go around and argue whether it is or whether it isn't hypocritical. Off you go. It's very good for enabling people, especially shy students, to be able to express their points of view in a more open way. So by writing down their arguments and posting it on a post-it note, they are expressing their group views to the group, but it's in a sort of a quieter way.
This one is about fighting against poverty but not buying fair trade products.
You're not fighting for your cause, instead you're going against what you believe in.
Doing it in pairs today meant that they could go around, discuss with each other, open up arguments, and make it more active for them, make it more engaging, make sure that they're participating with what they're doing, rather than waiting perhaps for somebody else to say what they were going to say.
This is supporting a football team, but only when they have won the match, which is basically glory supporting.
It's a bit like when if you have a friend, you have to sit with your friends, even if they're maybe going through a bit of a rough patch.
I use lots of different approaches to teaching. I don't think I ever do a lesson twice, and so I'm quite happy to use a textbook as a tool, and then other times I'm quite happy to do discussion, and other times I like them to be moving around the room. It's important that they are able to learn through sort of the whole person. It's important that they learn through their movements, through things that they see, through things that they hear, and so incorporating all of these approaches helps somebody learn. When do you think somebody is hypocritical then, when they're claiming to be a Christian? You have somebody who's a Christian, who's committing a so-called Christian sin by sleeping with other people, and yet they're still classing themselves as a Christian. Is that hypocritical? Some students find it quite easy to match up commitments for other people, and other students find it very hard to express what's in themselves. But there was a group that began to realise that the commitments that other people have, okay, you can see them by what they do, but you don't necessarily know what people believe and are committed to. Some research has come out to say that Martin Luther King plagiarised and was promiscuous. This is recent research. Let's say it's true. What questions does that raise in your own minds now?
It put doubts in your mind as to whether what he did was really what he was trying to do, and whether he wanted the best for people or not.
Do you doubt that then?
I do after being told that.
I think it makes him less of a Christian, but it doesn't undermine what he actually said, because he said things about black people should be equal to white people, and that's got nothing to do with him sleeping around.
What have you learnt about your own commitments? What have you learnt about the commitments of somebody else that you know in this room? And thirdly, what message have you taken away with you about Dr. Martin Luther King? A man who's imperfect, just like the rest of us. By the end of it, I think they were learning. They put a lot into it, and that was really good to see. You have to take a risk with these approaches, and usually the risks pay off.